Five. And boom. Okay, excellent. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and taking time out of their busy schedule to be with us as we discuss a very serious topic, but a very happy topic as well, with student minister Tremon Muhammad and his lovely wife, Sister April Muhammad from Birmingham, Alabama, who have been married for 22 years. And they have some great advice and some great personal testimonies to help inspire others who aren't married yet and those who have been married to keep going. First of all, assalamu alaikum, brother Tremon and Sister April. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend some time with us this evening. Off the record.
It's an honor to be on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, so the first question I would go sisters first. The first question is, who chose who first? Who you know?
They must not have heard this legendary story, huh?
No, I'm not familiar.
I chose him.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, 1991. We were in high school. Apparently he had to get another credit in English, so he's a year older. So it was my freshman year and his sophomore year, but he had to do another English class. So we were in English class and I was just trying to see who was the cutest boys in the room. And I just, kind of saw that boy with that dark skinned boy with that hot top fade. And I was like, ooh.
Okay.
And after a while, I let him know he was going to be my husband. So he thought I was crazy, but look.
And you told him this when you was a freshman in high school, you already knew?
10th grade, I told him he would be
10th grade. Okay, 10th grade. Okay, wonderful. Okay, excellent. Brother Minister, I'm coming to you in 1 second. Walaikum salam, Sister Miriam. Walaikum salam, Sister Katina, our dear friend, and peace Naima to you as well. Thank you all for watching Off the Record. Okay, Brother Minister, she said that she chose you first. What was your response and why?
Well, being that I was I didn't like a lot of like attention on me, and she was she was like a spotlight. She was putting a lot of attention on me. So I kind of like stopped it, you know what I'm saying? Like kind of shunning her away or whatever. But after a while, she was kind of persistent. So after a while, I don't know, I kind of gave in. So it wasn't, and I don't want to say gave in like that, but I'm saying like I gave in because the it was just too much attention. She would just do stuff like call you out in class, all
I would write poems. I would write poems about him. All my essays were about us. So
yeah, and then she'll turn him in. She'll turn him in, and then she might read him out loud, and the teacher might bust me out. Like, there's a poem about you.
So the whole school knew. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, well, what let you know that she was the one, Brother Tremon?
What let me know that she was the one? So if I go back to that time period in high school, she was interested. Well, she wanted to know about what I was into, and we were interested in some of the some similar things in terms of music, history, things like that. So it wasn't a thing like I knew instantly or we knew instantly. It was a thing where it evolved, and over time we kind of figured it out. It was natural.
Okay, excellent. And Sister April, but since you said you knew basically as soon as you saw him, that he was the one.
I already had the children names picked out.
Oh, you already had
you write the children names,
yes,
and the hearts and all that. I've always been very determined, so it's very few things that I've never gotten.
Yeah, she did know early. She told me it was weird. It was just weird. She told me, she was like, I'm looking at your I see your hair and your eyes, and that's I want my children hair and eyes to be like that. So you're gonna be my husband. What?
Yeah, see, I was all about the genetics. I looked and I knew what I needed to compliment me, and it worked. The formula worked.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Now, do you all still date like you all did in high school?
We were up until recently.
Yeah, we have picked out a and by the way, this may be one of the realest interviews that you've had.
Very.
And that's because we don't want to give like fairy tale answers and whatnot. We want to give you the real and give it to you like in real time, because in real time, you know, once we get down the line a little bit in the questions, in real time, we're going to tell you how our relationship is still defining itself. Matter of fact, we're doing a thing right now called redefining
our marriage,
our marriage and our relationship. There's a show, I think it's called, what is it, Red Table?
Yeah,
Talks,
Red
but what's the name? Will Smith and no,
Jada.
it's not him, but Jada. And they reached a point in their marriage where they were talking about redefining. And so we kind of not necessarily at the point that they were at, but we're at a stage where we're doing something called redefining our marriage. So what was that question again? I'm sorry.
Yes. Do you all still date?
Oh yeah.
Like
So what we had done last year, well, 2 years ago, and we kept it up for about a year. We picked a day, and our day was Thursday. And we,
full day.
Yeah, nothing else. We wouldn't allow anything else to happen on that day. And we just spent the whole day. We'd go out, we'd do lunch. We may go to the art museum. We may go to the movies or whatever.
That's
but
good.
From that morning all the way to that night, it was just it was our day. And so it worked out a whole lot. But you know, and this is one thing you have to guard against. You can't let life get in the way of improving your relationship.
Yes, sir.
And we kind of allowed, because we have, you know, she's running the school. I have the mosque and several other things in the community. And so we kind of allowed all of that to get in the way. So we're going back to, you know, picking a day out of the week to make sure that we don't let anything get in the way of that.
Excellent. Yes, yes, sir. And thank you. Now, Sister April, are there any people, how do you know who should you listen to for advice or counsel if you're in a relationship that may give you want to keep you all together as opposed to tear you all apart?
You know, I've always been kind of wise at a young age, so I'm very intuitive, so I can tell when somebody is trying to do something maliciously. And I'll give you an example. When I was a young girl coming into mosque, I'm just gonna be real. You know, we were married, and they were like, "Well, you can't worship your husband," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm not worshiping him," but I would be so serving towards him, like manicures, facial, like everything. He was spoiled, but he wasn't even high maintenance. But I just did it all for him, and people thought I was doing too much. And it was little things that were said, and it did affect my service towards him. And I've learned to kind of tune into certain tones when people are saying things because they don't do it or they're not at that level and they think I'm too far gone. But this is my marriage. You know, this is what I want to do in my service to my husband. So if those are my goals, then I mean, you know. So I've just learned, I'm always observant of people. They don't even have to say anything to me. I'm gonna be honest with you. Your mother and father are great, have been great inspirations for me. Your mom and I have a lot of talks, and she really have inspired me to just see the bigger picture. I've cried to your father before. So they have been really pillars for me. But I'm just used to now. I'm used to hearing the shade. Nobody really comes to us like that anymore. They usually come to us for advice. So we don't really get that anymore. But as a young married couple, we got a lot of you doing too much. I don't know from his perspective, but I know from my perspective, I was always told that I was doing too much or worshiping him or whatever.
Yes, sir. And Brother Tremon, Brother Minister, how did you know who to go to and try to discern the spirit as far as giving advice?
Well, I knew instinctively that if I heard you talking crazy about your wife, and you know, or if I heard you talking crazy about women, period, I knew not to necessarily go to you or listen to you. So you know, I knew to go to people who had experience, and sometimes that experience is experience on what not to do.
Right.
So sometimes, you know, a person you can watch a person and see what not to do, or talk to them and realize what not to do. But as April said, your parents, I talk to your dad a lot, probably every day. But I would watch him a lot, especially in the early years of being in Atlanta. I would watch how he would deal with you all as his children and how he would deal with his wife. And I learned a lot from that. You know, and even during the years of him being supreme captain, when he would do those, I know you could be too young to remember, but being
I'm too young. I'm too young. I'm too young. I wasn't around.
I know you remember the time when we had hookups, phone hookups. We weren't fancy. We had webcams back then.
Okay.
Everybody would get in the same room and listen on the speakerphone, and your dad would give us advice on marriage, and you know, go and get a rose and take it home. And I think he saved a lot. He saved me a lot of times with the roses, cheap, because I might have been in the doghouse. But she didn't know that it was an instruction that I got from FOI class to go and get a rose, and it was just heartwarming to her, and all he cares. I just got an instruction and I carried it out. But anyway, yeah, you just have to kind of, like she said, discern the spirit and realize that everybody is not necessarily for your good. Yeah. But you kind of have to look at what they have gone through and what they're going through now.
Okay, excellent. Sister April, how do you communicate to Brother Tremon about his friends and the type of friends that he has around him? Does that affect you or no?
He don't have no friends. Not let me.
You know what? Before she even finished, that's a running joke in my household. So, Brother Joshua, I got this group chat, right, with my high school. Yes. Well, they're not even high school friends. My childhood friends. We went to high school together, but we all grew up together from children.
Yes, sir.
We started the group text, chain text or whatever. So, man, look, I be on the text and I'm laughing like I'm back in high school again. And she's like, who are you talking to? And it's the group chat. And yes, so sir. When my children ask me, they be like, who is that? I say, oh, that's just my friends. They be like, friends? You don't have no friends.
Yeah.
So I guess I can't have friends.
Well,
anyway.
Well, recently, in the process of just kind of us growing, I think he realized he didn't have any friends. And I don't want to say any friends, but anybody outside of, to be honest, of your father that he talks to a whole lot, and a couple of other ministers throughout the nation, but nobody on a regular, every day. But recently he's reconnected with his child, like you said, his childhood friend. So they've been doing more things together. And so I mean, I'm okay with it because he gives me freedom to do what I want to do with my friends. So I'm okay.
Excellent. Okay, Brother Tremon, what about you as far as your wife having friends? How does that make you feel? And as far as her having her friends?
I think that we should all give each other freedom. To do, I mean, of course, everything has limits, but insecurity is what keeps us bottled in. And sometimes I was talking to, as a person was telling me one time that, even when they want to go, and this is a female, she said, sometimes I just want to go to Walmart by myself. And, my husband wants to tag along. And, sometimes we just need to give each other space. Everybody needs space and time to themselves. Yes, and what we don't realize is we want to keep people bottled up and keep them wrapped up around us. But if a person does not spend time with themselves and doesn't love themselves first, then you don't stand a chance. So that's, when you try to do that, that's just insecurity. So I believe in letting people blossom and letting her go and have, fun with her friends. Just like I want to have fun with mine. Like I said, everything has limits, but when you get to a certain point, you already know what to expect from the person that you with.
Wonderful. And thank you all for watching. And I want to thank my sister Miriam and her book, ABC I Love Me, for sponsoring this podcast. My brother, Politically Oppressed, and his shirts for sponsoring it. And my children's book, Cleopatra, is on Amazon, so y'all can go get that as well. I want to say, Brother Tremon, you said redefining marriage is something that you all wanted to talk about. Could you please explain it from your standpoint, and then Sister April, yours as well?
So, as human beings, we're always growing. Even physically, every 7 years, I think, every cell in your body is replaced. You're just not the same person. So for every physical principle, there's a spiritual reality. I'm not the same person that I was last year, much less yesterday. And so when we first got married, and we got married real young, I'm just not the same person. She's not the same person. So as you grow, you know, I always use the example of a tree. A tree will grow and it has branches, and those branches, if they're like unkept, they grow in a bunch of different directions, but it's still on the same tree. But a good gardener or a good, you know, tree pruner or whatever will allow that tree and the branches to grow, but you have to, you know, shape them and cut them and develop them so that they grow in their own direction, but not too far away, you know, to damage the actual tree. And so as we are growing and redefining ourselves as individuals, then as time goes along, we have to redefine our relationship, because I don't need the same thing at 43 that I needed at 23. I don't want the same thing that I at 43 that I wanted at 23. So but first of all, I have to know what it is that I want, what it is that I desire. And then I have to be able to share that and communicate that to her. And then she has to make a decision on whether she can provide that or not, which she can. We all have the capacity to do whatever it is that we want to do. But yeah, that's it. Redefining yourself first, and then redefining your relationship.
Excellent. Sister April?
Yeah, it's really just to dovetail off of what he just said. I think for me, what I've noticed is, you know, a lot of people want to jump ship once you grow apart. Growing apart is a part of the process. So you're going to grow apart. Like, I think we all need to get that out of our head that that's not going to happen. So having those hard conversations, knowing when to have those conversations, I think is very important, to have those sit downs and say, look, you know, this is where I am. I don't know where you want to go, but I know this is where I am, and these are my goals. What's your goals? So we kind of do that, I would say, every 5-ish years or so, every 5 to 7 years. Some are tougher than others. So I think we're both going through a growth process, and neither one of us, I think we're both learning ourselves, the new us. And in that process, we have to see what are our new needs? What is it that I need? What is it that he needs? And how are we going to complement each other with that? You know, and space, what we've recently found out is since high school, even when we were in high school, we would work together at Pizza Hut. You know, we always worked together. Jobs came into mind, soldiering together. So sometimes we're more like brothers and sisters than anything, because we kind of grew up together. But we're recently understanding that we kind of need a little more space to define who we are individually. So yes, I'm Brother Tremon's wife, but I'm Sister April, and this is what I do. This is what Sister April can bring to the table. And same with Brother Tremon. So we, you know, in the community, some people I know recently they were like, well, Sister April, I think they're getting used to it now. Would you say that? But usually wherever he was, I was there, or wherever I was, he was there. But it's kind of shifting a little bit, and that's a part of the process. I don't want to go everywhere he goes. I don't want to do that.
And then not only that, but learning that you don't have the same interests anymore, and,
right.
And that's okay. But Josh, you remember years ago, the minister was talking about the structure of the Nation of Islam. And he was telling us how there's nothing wrong with the structure, except the fact that now it needs to expand, because it's too narrow to handle everything that we have to do. So it's the same thing with relationships. So oftentimes people think that because they have grown apart, or they have different interests, or their structure is too narrow, they think that it's time to just break up the marriage. But it's not that. It may be just time. Nothing ever really dies unless you allow it to die. Sometimes it's just time to change forms. So, you know, I think that that's the process that we're going through now. It's not time for it to die. And that's a process that a lot of people go through when they reach a certain point. They misunderstand and think that it's time to kill it, when really it's just time for it to change forms.
Okay, excellent. Thank you all both. Now, you kind of scared me a little bit because you said,
on what part?
I'm about to explain. You said every 7 years, everybody changed, right? So if I meet a woman who she's like, oh, I'm like, oh, she's the perfect match. She's the perfect, you know, woo. So you telling me 7 years into it, she gonna be somebody else?
She is. No, I'm gonna tell you, as soon as you have that baby, she's gonna be somebody else.
Not even the day after.
She push it out.
As soon as the baby come out, she different.
So I'm sorry. No, I'm gonna say in 3 years she's somebody else, whether you have a baby or not. So get prepared, brother.
3 years.
But see, look, Josh, don't let that scare you though, because
Right.
you're gonna be a different person too.
Yeah.
Because she may be falling in love with you as you are now, but as you grow and change, then you're gonna be a different person. But the object is to grow together.
I don't see it as change. I see it as
Evolving.
evolving. Yeah,
Right.
It's like an evolution.
Right.
You know, an elephant is still an elephant, but you know, a million years ago, you know, they had different, you know, conditions that they were living under, so they looked a little bit different.
Right.
A million years ago.
Caterpillar and butterfly.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's an evolution. It's not a change.
Absolutely excellent. I'm coming. I gotta follow back up with this. Okay, my sister Naima says, "All praises to Allah." Mimi says, "That's beautiful. Thank you both for your transparency." Thank you. Okay, excellent, Mimi. Okay, so with this changing, I want to just stay right here for a minute because I want to know. I mean, I want to know. Put me on. Help me out.
Yes, sir. I got you. Come on with it.
Okay, so could you give me an example of a change that she might? Will it just be like in she don't? I like The Office. Now all of a sudden she only want to watch Tyler Perry, or like is it just in sports, or like I mean like is it in something small like that, or is it hormonal where she's
So
mental? Like help me understand what kind of change. Help me understand. Put me on. Put me on. Explain it.
I mean, it could start small like that, but let me give you an example. So there's this book called The 5 Love Languages. I actually learned about this book in the class with your dad one time. Or we did. The 5 Love Languages. And this therapist, relationship therapist, realized that he studied all of his therapy on different couples, and he narrowed down the 5 what he called languages of love that people have. It's like words of affirmation, receiving gifts, physical touch, and 2 more. So anyway, he said that you have to find out what your love language is and then find out what your partner's love language is, because once you stop feeding that love language, then your partner starts to feel unloved, because that's the way that they communicate love. And once they stop feeding your love language, then you start to feel unloved. So my point is, you may start out as a person that likes physical touch, and that may be your love language. But as you grow and evolve, it may change to words of affirmation. It may change to receiving gifts. So it's not that you have changed, you just have evolved. And so you have to constantly keep up with the evolution of yourself as well as your partner.
I'll give you another example. When we first got together, he couldn't stand holding hands or anything like that. So lately, it's like he want to hold hands and do all of that. And I'm like, bruh, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, I'm different now. Like, I'm good. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, I understand. So for me, it would be the equivalent of I like to listen to a lot of fight music or like gangster music or something, and then 3 years from now I start listening to Drake every day and R&B every day. It's like I'm saying, slow music every day. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I get it. All right. What has been? I'll start with you, brother, Minister Tremon. What has been the greatest trial that you all have experienced, and how did you overcome it?
Oh man,
I'll choose that one.
I'm gonna narrow this down.
Jesus.
The greatest one. Let me think about a couple. The one that people would think was the greatest one may not have been the greatest one, but I'll deal with that. The issue that I had with the Birmingham Police Department, where I was accused of something that kind of shook up the city and the mosque, but the aim was to destroy the family. But being that I had never shown her any traits of that and didn't have no kind of history of that, it really didn't shake her or shake the family. So people would think that was the greatest trial, but it really was. It was one of the greatest personal trials for me, but I wouldn't necessarily say a trial for the marriage. But I would think that
it was a trial.
No, it was a trial.
It wasn't like that. It was like afterwards though. It was like some of the, it was like some stuff came back up. Like, well, you just assume that I believe you, stuff like that. But honestly, and I think we should be transparent about this, we were actually looking at separating before that happened. Like, and it was not in a negative way. We still was good, but it was like, I'm tired. Is this really what we want to do? And I'm saying from my standpoint, not him. He's like, to death do his part. That's it. And me, I'm like, oh man, like, is this where we need to be? So, in my head, I was like, now I'm gonna be real. That could have been my way out if I really wanted to be out. But for me, I knew him, and I knew him as a friend. I knew his character, and I was not gonna. I just knew that wasn't the thing. I was like, oh no. It really brought us together. It really made us stronger. I believe it made us stronger. My irritation with that was that trial for me was, you just assumed that I was good, I guess because I laughed and act like it. And I was like, how you do? Where did that come from? And made jokes of it, but it wasn't a trial about the actual situation for me. It was just, you just automatically assume I believe whatever.
So what is the biggest trial then, Tremon? I'm coming back to you, Sis April.
I would think, oh man, you know what? I know what it was. So back in prior to the economy collapsing,
Lord.
we had I think about 7 or 8 houses, and that was our I was a real estate agent for a lot of years. My whole family was in real estate, and then we eventually were able to acquire like 7 or 8 houses, and so I was selling real estate and doing decent with that, as well as doing, we had a couple of boarding houses, and the rest of the houses we had for rental and one we lived in. So when the economy failed, one by one, like people stopped paying rent. And so we would take from this one to try to save that one, and take from that one to try to save this one. And one by one, like a domino, we lost them. All the way up to the point where we ended up losing the one that we lived in. And there was one that we should have kept. And she said, let's just forget all of this and go to that one. Calm down. I see your face.
I'm just saying.
I just happened to look up and see her face.
Saying.
She's still holding this against me.
No, I'm here.
Guys, don't be bringing
you
up,
just
man.
said it, though.
Don't be bringing nothing back up.
You saw my healing. I went through my healing process.
Okay, great. So, but the point is, we lost like everything. All right. So because that was it. That was the main source of income.
Right.
And so when it failed, when it dropped, and so now we had to figure out how to.
You want to listen to me?
I forgot to put it on Do Not Disturb, and Scam likely tried to interrupt us. So anyway, we had to figure out how to try to recover quickly, but it wasn't a quick recovery process at all. So it actually lasted for years, and we still literally trying to recover. I mean, that was like a real big blow.
Really?
So,
just imagine 6 figures, and you go down to making together $10,000, if that. You know what I mean? Like, with how many children we had at the time? We had 3. I think everybody.
Yeah, we had 3. But so by us not having a like a backup plan or recovery, which most people didn't, it really threw us for a big loop.
And how did you I'm coming to you, Sis April, but how did you overcome that, Brother Tremon, from your side? How did you overcome the trial?
So with me, I'm kind of resilient. Other people call it crazy, but I will I can suffer a loss, but I have a different type of way of looking at it. And so I'm not gonna say it doesn't affect me, because as I look back, and when I do like an in-depth study of myself, I can identify the years that I was literally probably clinically depressed. And when I look back on it now, I can see it. But back then, when I was going through it, it was just like, okay, keep pushing, push through it. But now I can look back and say, damn, I was really messed up, and I was depressed. So it did affect me, but I did have enough insight to just keep going. I think, well, I'm not going to answer for her, but that's how I overcame, just by continuing to work, keep pushing.
Praise be to God. Thank you for that, and thank you, Sister April, for your resilience as well. And my sister Naima says, that's real strength, Sister April. That's the type of wife I aspire to be. Ride or die. Thank you, Naima.
Thank you
okay,
a lot.
Sister April, what has been the biggest trial for you in the marriage, and how did you overcome it?
I'm gonna say the same one. Now that I look at it, I mean, because honestly, I'm still healing from some of that, you know, the decision making process, all of that, like that anger, frustration, even though I consider myself pretty low maintenance. I can go work and make all the money I want to, but you know, it was just other things built into that I kind of attached to our marriage, our relationship, which made me pull back. Um, Really, we had too much on us, and I had to learn that it wasn't his fault alone. You know, the management of the mosque, we were like late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, mind you, this is like late 20s.
We got so many properties, we got children, we got the school. I'm as a matter of fact, I got another business on the side, and he was doing other things. So it was just too much in our communication. And I'm gonna tell you what I've learned most out of that. You know, a lot of people think that when you get money, it's gonna make your relationship better. I think it put more strain on our relationship than anything. When we had money, I felt more content, and I hate to say that because I'm not gonna turn away money, but I was just at so much peace. I wanted to be at another level, but I think we were kind of peaceful when we were just regular. You know what I mean? When I had to hang my clothes outside on the line or whatever, it was cool for me, and it wasn't a lot of stress. But when that money started coming and constant closing, and we would get into it, and it was funny because when we took one day, because I went through a depression too, and I felt myself almost about to have a stroke. Like I could feel it. I could just feel it. And I woke up one day, and I said, you know what? They can take the house. He said we lost the house and that we lived in. We really gave it back because that was my first time getting a job. I hadn't had a job since I was 19 years old. You know, I was independent since we had gotten married, and you know, I had to go get a job just to what was that, bankruptcy or whatever, just to try to keep the house. And I was like, I'm done. You know, I want to sleep. I'm tired. I'm done. So when we went to the lawyer, it was hilarious because he looked at our debt, and he looked at him, and he looked at me, and he said, I'm surprised. He told me, he said, I'm surprised you're not here for divorce. That's what he told me. And I was like, don't give me any ideas. But it was it was just me knowing that I've had to grow to know that it wasn't all his fault. You know, it was a learning curve. It was a heavy learning curve. But I gotta be honest, just the last few years, I just kind of start cleansing myself of that. Even so much as recently, it's certain things that kind of spark. It's like, see, it's like a repeat. You know, why are we repeating this? And I'll react to it as if it's as if we're going back through that same situation. So I had to check myself. You know, I had to keep myself in check.
Okay,
it's a process now. It don't happen overnight.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you all both for your transparency and honesty and great advice. My sister Miriam says, I pray to Allah that everything you all lost, you regain, and then some. You all deserve it. You all have a beautiful family. Excellent.
Praise be to God.
Okay, so here's the points that I wanted to go back over again. Okay, as far as the trust, okay, I have trust issues. Like many people, men, people, women, I got trust issues. Now, Sister April, you said before another trial came, you was already contemplating something else. How, as a man, right, who's saying I'm not married, woo woo. If I'm with you, you have children, right? How we have children together, and you can think about leaving. What does that do to somebody with trust issues? Because I'm like, well, damn, the children ain't locking you in, the marriage ain't locking you in. You still can think, oh no, can't. That's what I got trust issues.
Kind of sound like him, like he's. Yeah, because if I stay gone too long, he'll be looking like, oh, so she ain't coming back. Because I'll say crazy stuff like, don't let me get in the car and not come back. So no, my mother, I grew up in a house with domestic violence and everything. So she would run back and forth. And one thing that I held some animosity towards her for was staying with my father. When she said I asked her why. I was like, I just don't understand it. And she said it was because I had children. And that statement never made sense to me in my head, until I got married. I see more now how deep that is. I don't judge her the way I used to. even though I probably still wouldn't have stayed like she did, but I don't judge her anymore, because when you have children, like you said, Brother Josh, it does add another element. Even more so for us now, it's like we can't do it. We can't leave, because it's not just even our children, it's the community, it's our family. Our family won't let us leave. You know, his grandmother, if she hears something is off, she's coming. My mother, she's like, April, what you doing to the boy? What? So no, it was me. I wanted to leave, because when you get married, now I'm gonna say this, because I have young daughters and I know they're getting to that point of marriage or what have you. And it's pros and cons to being married young, and being a teenager. Whew, women, what I find, by the time you're 30, you start reflecting on all the stuff that you should have done, all the places you could have gone, where you could have been in life if it wasn't for this man. So you can be in a good space and your husband's like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you happy? And it's because, you know, I never really got to know myself. I went straight from my mama house to, you know, being a wife and a mother. So it was more for me, like, I don't even know. I wanted to see what it felt like to have some time for myself. So I couldn't express that, I think, properly until he really helped me understand. He was like, just go get a room, go spend some time with, you should be by yourself, you know. And you wouldn't really get that from a normal husband. He's not a normal husband. So he is very supportive. So I would say he has kept this marriage together, with his wisdom. Sometimes it's irritating, but with his wisdom. And it's one thing about being married to a fellow believer. Once you bring that Quran up, there's not much you're gonna argue with. Like, what can you say? You bring the minister up, what you gonna say? You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of I told somebody, I was like, I stopped thinking about divorce, because every time I think about divorce, I get pregnant. So I just that was a joke that I used to say, but it's not. That's not the case. But I don't think about divorce anymore. I think about space. Sometimes I do consider space when I get into those modes and wonder what space look like. You know, so I think that's why redefining our marriage is necessary.
Yes, ma'am.
Why you not?
Okay. Okay, I understand. Brother Tremon, for you, what advice do you give to somebody like myself who's got trust issues? And I'm saying, even when you in it, you got children, and it's still a possibility that somebody, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's always a possibility. That's a reality. So the thing is, when you have trust issues, when you're learning how to swim, hell, I got drowning issues. I don't want to drown, but you got to jump in there. You got to jump in there and just start paddling. So trust issues, I understand it. Most human beings have it, and especially in our community, we have it with our upbringing. So, but it's a reality. It could happen. Right. Like hell, a person could go crazy. A person could pass away. All of that could happen. But at the end of the day, you just got to go through it. Allah is God.
And it's so funny, because the day of our marriage, you know what my mama told me? Right, getting ready to go to the mosque, she said, "Oh, April, you don't have to go through with it." I'm like, "What?" She was like, "You don't have to go through it if you don't want to. And if it doesn't work out, you can get a divorce." No, I'm not throwing my mother under the bus. I'm saying, and out of being naive, you know, divorce is so common. It's like, okay, if it doesn't work out, then, you know. And till this day, my mother is so proud of us that she said we broke the generational curse of that divorce. And, you know, she was married 7 years and divorced, and now she just want to see us. This is our success, measure of success for her. Like, oh my God, she don't care about the fact that we lost all of that. Her pride is in the fact that she never had to hear about any domestic violence, any police being called on us fighting. The children will not let anybody talk about their father, because they go crazy. And just the respect that they have for our marriage. And she's crazy about us as a couple. Like, we're truly one in the community, and in our family, like it's April and Tremon. It's like a brand, you know, Jay-Z and Beyonce. I know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, wonderful. So my next issue is as far as when you talk about the trial of money. Okay, so how do you know, or do you know if the person you're with will break under the financial trial?
Been through
You
that
don't know.
already.
You don't know. You just have to kind of go through it. That's why the courtship process is important, because there's no guarantee with nothing, but you're taking the best educated leap that you can take. You know, we're asking the questions. When I first came into orientation, the minister at that time, he said look at your girlfriend's mother. I don't know if he said girlfriend or the person that you're considering marrying. He said, look at her mother. He said, because in 30 years, that's who you're looking at. So, so if you're looking at, you know, a bunch of drama, you know, whatever you're looking at in 30 years, that's what you're going to be looking at, unless that person is on the course toward changing that. And, you know, capitalizing on the mistakes that their mother made, or they hate what they saw so much that they want to do something different. So I'm not saying by any means that you should judge the present person solely based on their parents, because we all know that can be reversed. But my point is, you don't know. There's no guarantee, but you want to make the best decision that you can make. But at the end of the day, you can't delay forever on making the decision, because you may get all, you know, you get all the way to 50, 60, 70 years old and finally make a decision, and then that ends in divorce.
Right. We know some people like that.
Yeah, hell, you might as well start it early.
That's true.
Okay, so what about when you all both spoke of depression, and I'm a big component of, you know, therapy and Dianetics, auditing, whatever's going to help, you know, mental health in our community, especially in relationships of the type of women that I've dealt with, and them dealing with me is just some drama and all that kind of stuff. How do you, when you get married, I'll start with you, Sis April, how do you love someone through their depression?
Well, you know what? I've never really seen him super depressed. So but I'm at the point that I can tell when he's off. You know, I mean, he's really good with kind of masking his emotions in that way. So he just kind of, you know, put himself in the work, or push, like he said, push through. And I have to sometimes say, look, are you okay? Like, what you need? And then it takes a minute and he'll open up. And when he open up, boy, Lord have mercy, he opens up. But it's not, he doesn't just easily opens up. So I wouldn't know when he's depressed right off. Back then I wouldn't know. So I think just being a support base, period. If you're supportive throughout, even when depression, or if depression hits, because depression, you know, it's kind of like a buzz thing now, but everybody gets a little depressed every now and then. It's just, you don't want to stay that way. And you got to learn how to become self-motivated. So he's very self-motivated. And so it's just, I'm super supportive of him throughout. So, you know, he'll let me know when he needs something. He's like, I let's ride out. So when he said, let's ride out, I know he wants to talk or something like that, you know.
Excellent. Okay, and Brother Tremon, how do you love someone through depression when they're depressed?
Well, I heard the minister say when he was introducing auditing to us, he said that when you get to know about the history of your brother or your sister, then it helps you to love them through what it is it helps you to love them through their present condition. So, you know, when you have a mate, it's good to talk about, go as deep as you can into their past, into their parents, into their history. And then when you find out like what they have gone through, and find out like what's in their bloodline, and some things are like you may have a predisposition or leaning towards something.
Right.
And once you know that, like your dad always tells me, Josh, he said, once you know, you got the advantage. So once you know it, then you already know what to expect under certain circumstances. And so sometimes, you know, if I see certain things or whatever, I just I ignore it. Like I just ignore it until it passes over. It's like a storm. You know, they say a lot of storms come in April. So,
First of all,
so I'm just saying,
the tornado
Sometimes-
come.
when the storms come, you have to just ride it out, Chief. You got to ride it out and let it pass through. And then once it passes through, everything is all good. What they say, April showers bring what?
Mayflower.
Mayflower.
This flowers
So,
in April.
yeah,
too.
so a lot of storms come in the month of April. I'm just saying. Go ahead.
Anyways,
Excellent. And I'll thank you all for your transparency and honesty. Thank you, Lake Salam, Sister Lisa. And Sister Shaniqua says, how do you support without becoming drained? We'll start with you, Sister April.
you said without becoming drained.
Yes, ma'am.
Ooh, that's heavy. That is heavy. It's called balance, and that's what I'm getting more of now. I think that question is probably the heaviest one of them all, because what people don't talk about is that drainage, and I think that drainage comes from the female even more so, because we're givers, and we naturally have the responsibility of nurturing the whole family, and you know, I think for our family, we're a little extra because we're not just nurturing each other. We got to nurture the community, because we're very supremely involved with the community. So it is draining. You have to take that moment. You have to have a supporting spouse to say, take some days for yourself. No children, no me, no nobody. Don't answer the calls. Just take that time for yourself. And you know that recently, I think I took like 3 days. I realized I'd never been by myself ever in my whole life, more than 24 hours. I'd never experienced that, being alone. And just to have those 3 days, I got to really recharge. And now I make sure that I recharge weekly, so that drainage, because it's going to happen. You're going to be drained. But with that drainage, you have to fill your love tank, or yourself. Don't look for somebody else to fill it back up for you. You do the things that you need to do to keep yourself filled up with what you need.
Excellent. Okay, Brother Tremon, how do you support without becoming drained?
Much like much like April just said, we have a sort of a unique situation, because usually in a relationship, you may have one person that is the person that's kind of out there, and then you have another person that's like a background type, supporter type.
Yes, sir. Yes,
In this situation, you have both people that are
Crazy.
both people that are kind of out there, and so it's real difficult to kind of switch roles to become that supportive person when you're used to being the person that's out there and you actually need support.
Right.
And it's almost like two stars that's shining, and like, hold up, what's up with all this light? Like, cut the light off for a second. It's like, you cut your light off. And I'm saying, my light don't go off. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, but the way to do it is this. You have to realize that you're not responsible for the happiness of another person.
Right.
You cannot change another person. The only person that you are ultimately responsible for, and the only person that you can ultimately change, is yourself. So it just goes back to what the minister said. Self-improvement is the basis for community development. But you can take that and put it on anything. Self-improvement is the basis for relationship development. Self-improvement is the basis for marriage development. Whatever you want to put it on. Everything starts with improvement of the self. And so that's how you see, when you become drained, it's because you are giving yourself. Somebody was talking a few days back about giving their gift and feeling drained. And I said, you have to, once you, when you give of yourself, then you have to disconnect. Otherwise, when you feel like you are responsible for that person being happy, or responsible, for that person's forward progress, then you're taking on too much, and then it begins to drain you. It has a pull on you. So it's the same thing in a relationship. At a certain point, like, you can push a person, you can encourage a person, but at the end of the day, if I'm going to be pushed and encouraged, you can try and you can help and you can push, but at the end of the day, if I don't do it, you have to realize it's not your fault, and you have to realize that it's only so far you can do it, and you can take it, and I have to take it the rest of the way. Otherwise, you're just going to feel drained and then end up disappointed, dissatisfied, and it just leads to a bunch of problems.
And you know, I appreciate that about him, because I think that was something that really helped me when he said, April, look, I can't make you happy. You're gonna have to make yourself happy. And when he said that, I really had to look and say, you know what? You are not the author of my happiness. And I'm putting that weight on you. And that's unfair for me to do. So ever since he said that, maybe 8 years ago or something like that, I really digested it and internalized that. And it really helped me kind of see that I am that author of that. And then, you know, the classes helped me understand that he's not my source of everything. If the bills don't get paid, you know what I mean? I still have Allah. Allah is sufficient for me. And once I really, you know, it's one thing to say, but it's another thing to just really, and it's another one thing to believe, but to know that he's sufficient, that's a whole nother thing. You move and act and walk like it's different. It's different. You walk different when you're a believer than when you're a knower, because you're walking with some supreme knowledge. Not just faith, it's knowledge at that point. So I think I've become a knower that Allah is sufficient for me. Even when it feels tight, I know Allah is sufficient because he's never left me. Like,
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Like, he's always pulled me up. So whether my husband is able to help or not. So that's been beautiful for me.
And then another thing, Josh, that we have to realize is most of the ways that we react come from two things. One, it comes from us watching our parents, and two, it comes from defense mechanisms as we're growing up. So when you do like a study of self and realize that all defense mechanisms come from, I guess personality quirks come from defense mechanisms, but that served you at the time. But once something doesn't serve you anymore, then it's time to let it go. So the scripture says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. Well, that just means that, you know, when I was a child and I had this defense mechanism, it served me as a child. But now that I'm an adult, and you ever had a conversation with a person and they just fly off the handle, you say, damn, you acting like you're 7 years old. But that's because they are still in that phase of 7-year-old defense mechanism.
Yes,
so
yes,
when you start to understand that, you have more empathy for the person that you're dealing with. And then we have to realize that our watching our parents, not only watching them physically, but we have like genetic ties to our parents. Sometimes you may have never met your mother or may have never met your father, but you still have some of the same traits and react the same way that they did. Let me give you an example. So I didn't realize until today. So my energy had been a little off, particularly yesterday. But yeah, and it had been a little bit off, like over the last couple of weeks. I had been mentioning my dad who passed away, and I had brought him up to a couple of people, and just kind of out of the blue, not necessarily reminiscing or nothing, but his name was coming up, and I was just bringing him up out of the blue. And then yesterday, my energy was off. I was supposed to do a live, and I was mad. She asked me, we were in the car, and there was a cup in the car, and it had ice in it. And she said, she picked it up. She said, "What's this?" I said, "It's a cup."
Right.
So anyway, I'm getting smart. I'm going off, and I didn't realize what was going on with me. But I never realized that yesterday was the date of the anniversary of his death, 14 years ago. Wow. And then guess what? Today is his birthday, and I didn't even realize that. So, but over the last couple of weeks, with his name coming up and me feeling a little funny or whatever, and then yesterday, going through what I was going through and not realizing, but that's like a tie, a genetic tie that you have, with somebody that you came from, but that has gone on. But I'm saying all that to say that we have these ties to our parents, whether they're living or dead, and you have to examine all of those and correct and kind of build off of what your parents gave you.
See, I'm just finding that out. I could have nurtured them through it.
That's good. I'm finding out.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you all. Minister Jamil says, "What a beautiful family with a beautiful couple with a beautiful family. Love y'all. We love you too." Naima says, "Brother Kevin, please give Brother Tremon and Sister April the greetings from Brother Kevin from Jackson, Mississippi." Yes, sir. And Sister Naima says, "How do you balance being laborers in the mosque and spending time with your family?"
So
At one point, both of us was laborers when we were in a smaller city, and that was toxic. And I'm glad the mandate you should do that. I think we make a conscious effort, though. We kind of different. We're different than the average Muslim couple, I think, laboring couple, because we really take family to a whole nother level. Like that's it. That's us. Like I'm like your mom and dad. Like I really appreciate them being examples for us, because our family is involved in the mosque. They're involved what we do. But when it's family time, we shut it down. Like praise be to Allah, but it's our family time. You know what I mean? It's kind of harder for him because the phone got to be on all the time. And he got to roll when it's time to roll or take those calls. But I do give him a lot of credit, because I've seen a lot of marriages kind of go down when they're laborers in this work because of that. You know, the lack of time, the lack of nurturing, because marriages have to be nurtured. You know, you can't just, okay, we married, we may sleep together, we go out to eat, we make appearances. No, that thing got to be, it's like, it's a constant. It's definitely a constant. And I give him props because as a man, he finds a way to balance as much as he can. Of course, as a woman, you always want more time, but I think I'm respectful enough to know what I know. I know what I signed up for. I know what I got myself into. So I'm respectful of his mission and support it. So I try not to give him a hard time. Sometimes it's like, I got to go out of town. I'm like, but we need to do this. You know, we committed to this. Like, dang, can't, reschedule. But it's you got to know. Sisters got to be real with themselves when they know they have a man who's like if you're married to an entertainer or someone who's a CEO of a company, you got to know you're not going to get a whole lot of like that much time. But they also have to know that you have to allot this time if you want to keep your family together. Because if your family is apart, it's going to affect your business or whatever you got going on. So yeah, that's from my perspective.
Yes, sir. Excellent question and excellent response. I wanted to say that I don't want to run you all over time, so I just want to answer these next three questions. I want to answer these next three questions that I have here. Thank you all for watching as well. You all said something about the parents of the person you're speaking with and studying the parents and them. Well, I'm late, but I'm on Game of Thrones now, and Game of Thrones, a lot of it has to do with marrying of the families and the importance of who you are married to and what that represents, because the child may grow into that. You all have children. Would you advise, how is giving your advice to your children who are married, trying to get married, how much do you look at the parents of the other person who they're getting married, or does that matter?
Oh, it matters, because when they bring them, when they tell me about this person or that person, I'm like, what the mom, what? No, I do. Man, I may be the hardest one, because see, I'm real serious about that. That's a legacy, and we're trying to get some. I make a joke. I'm like, we need purebred Muslims around here. No. That's hard for me, because I had to tell. I look at all that, not just the boy or whatever. I'm telling them, you're gonna have to look at their relationship, the male's relationship with their mother, the mother and the father's relationship, if they're divorced, what kind of situations they had, and because if you married to a person and the mother is not a Muslim, or the father, or whatever, the parents are not Muslim, then I scare my children. I was like, do you want to send your baby over to their grandparents' house and with the possibility of eating pork? And they have to think about that. They're like, oh Lord, no. You want Christmas trees that's just from our perspective. It could be different from everybody else, but I want, my children are very I won't say they're like pious or anything, but they're very they love Islam. They love our culture. So when it comes to that, they're kind of serious too. But I'm hardcore with that whole family structure thing. Okay, yes, I try to arrange marriages if I can.
My my view on that is not changed, but kind of evolved a little bit. And one thing that I think that we did well is while we're raising the children is not trying not to be judgmental and trying to give them the freedom to choose. Like we didn't force any of them. Like our two daughters are registered, but we didn't force them to get registered,
Right.
and didn't necessarily put pressure on them to get registered, because at the end of the day, that's a decision that you have to make. And I think a lot of times we make a mistake as parents by force. Okay, you're 16 now, so you got to recite,
Right.
and then you force a person that is not necessarily ready for that into hypocrisy. So you have to give them the room to choose and give them the room to make their mistakes. So by the same token, when it comes to marriage, I am more so looking at, because look, if we have taught our children properly, then we have to trust them to make the right decision. So I'm more so looking at them choosing a good, righteous person rather than necessarily a title or a label. So that's what you looking at me?
I'm just digesting. I'm like, title, label. What do you mean? Like man, woman? What do you mean?
Of course not, man, woman. I told you we're gonna give you this in real time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But I'm saying, when I say label, I mean religious label.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay.
I'm saying, if you may call yourself a Muslim, you may call yourself a Hebrew, whatever you call yourself, the men say you are whatever you call yourself, okay? But as long as they are a righteous, upstanding person of good character, then I believe the rest can be worked on.
Excellent.
Worked through.
Thank you all. And Sister Aisha says, when you marry someone, I believe you marry the family. Absolutely. Their family, the other person's family.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, with two more questions. What advice, Sister April, would you give to future wives?
Be patient with yourself and your mate. And what I'm about to say may sound controversial or whatever. Lower your expectations just a little bit. Just a little bit. And when I say that, I don't mean just expect him to let you live in a dump or anything. Just accept anything. But
not lower your standards.
Right. Don't your expectations.
Don't have unrealistic expectations.
Right. Right. Thank you for that clarity, sir. But yes, what he said.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, well, Brother Tremon, what advice would you give to future husbands?
Be a goddamn man.
It's Ramadan, beloved.
Oh, excuse me.
Jeez.
Look, I'm sorry.
You mean beef? What do you mean?
No, but I'm saying, listen. Sometimes you just got to say it how it is.
Yes, sir.
It's too much femininity amongst men these days. All right, so I'm saying, goddamn, I like beef. I'm
really?
Oh God.
Really?
I swear to God, I'm not trying.
Jeez.
I'm trying, but I'm saying it's
all good.
Man, let's be a man.
Just okay, that one.
See, the problem in the world today is a lack of manhood, and too many emotional men. That's from the street all the way to the church to the mosque. On the street, you got a bunch of emotional little boys that react like little emotional little boys, and they got these little toy guns, and they get mad. It ain't no fight, it ain't nothing. It's just I'm gonna shoot because you emotional and you don't know how to handle your emotions.
And we're talking about marriage.
But I'm saying, but these little boys are gonna have to grow up to be husbands.
Right.
So he said, what advice would I give husbands? Right. I'm saying, be a goddamn man.
Okay.
So be a man, learn manhood principles. And the best way to learn manhood principles is in the FOI.
Excellent. I thank you all.
So join the FOI.
Excellent. Excellent. I thank you all. Both you all are great. This has been thank you everybody for watching. My sister Mimi said that you're acting like my dad, because that's how my dad talks. And we'd be like,
I know.
Everything's goddamn. But I want to thank you all because you all helped me. And I'm sure you've helped a lot of people who are watching this with you all's personal testimony and great advice. Thank y'all. I'm just happy that y'all came on in to help inspire us. Y'all really helped us out. And
thank you for having us.
yes, sir. I'm gonna put this on YouTube. Thank you all for watching Off the Record. I'll have some more some guests coming up Sunday, and I'll keep everybody posted about our next guest. Thank you all very much.
You.
Walaikum salam.
Walaikum salam.